Have you been wondering if you should introduce the buyer broker agreement to your clients or potential clients, or should you just keep working with the ambiguity of you're in a relationship with them? If so, then this episode is for you. Today, I sit down with Sam Fakih out of San Diego, who's been in the industry for 2 decades. And for the past 7 years has been having his buyers sign a buyer's broker's agreement. And with that, he unpacks all kinds of amazing nuggets that you absolutely need to hear. So before we get started, if you find value in content like this, please go ahead and hit that subscribe button now. And as always, I'm your referral partner out of San Francisco, Shawn Kunkler. Sam, thanks for joining me today, man. I really appreciate your time.
Dude, really good to connect with you, man.
Yeah, so it's funny. We actually first met through a mutual friend down in San Diego at a retreat. And then the hilarious thing is there's thousands of agents, and you and I kept literally bumping into each other like throughout the whole thing. And it was like getting to the point where it was just like, it was comical. So I'm glad we're now able to connect here. But to give everybody some context of you, you have been in the business for 2 decades, which is a massive track record. You're out of San Diego. But the thing I really wanted to sit down and talk to you specifically about is you leverage and have been leveraging the buyer broker agreement, which, given everything that's happening in our industry, basically you're the expert. So why not just go to the source and we'll talk about that. But before we get there, obviously you've had a long trajectory in this business. What inspired you to get into real estate to start with?
Man, when you say 2 decades, you're making me feel old, man. But
well, you got in the industry at 15 years old.
Yeah, exactly. It's been a wild ride, but no, I was actually, I believe I was 26 when I got my license. I got into it, my uncle was already in the business. He was killing it. In the past, when I was younger, some family members, uncles, my dad, they were in, spec homes, building spec homes from the ground up, finding the property, building the right, home on it, the location, selling it. And, at the time I didn't understand that was a spec home or whatever it is. I just thought it was cool, man. My family was taking raw land, building a house and then selling it. And, that intrigued me. And back in, let's see, wow, dating myself. But yeah, 25, 26 years old, got my license, jumped in. As you know, the trajectory of the market was changing at the time. We didn't know it yet. It was on an upswing. And I thought to myself, wow, real estate is the golden goose, man. This is great stuff. But as we all know, the bottom dropped out a few years later. And everyone was scrambling. We didn't know what was going on, the Great Recession. But, the market adjusted eventually. And fortunately, the REO market was good for us at the time, for myself and some other agents I knew. And, we did what we did to survive. And what was the other part of your question?
Essentially, how did you kick it off? How did you get started? But it sounds like through that crazy recession, you stayed in it. You didn't pick up a side job. You just stayed focused.
I remember the bottom dropped out and I was like, am I going to have to get a side hustle? Because, I've got to pay the bills. Going deeper on that and, what is it, 07, 08, started taking a bunch of short sale listings, trying to save people from, from their foreclosures that were upside down in their loans. But unfortunately, the banks weren't equipped yet for short sale offers. They didn't have these set up short sale departments that we saw later on. So we sent great offers. It was back in the day when you used to fax it to the bank. I mean, we had pages and pages of faxes, but these banks couldn't handle them. And most of these properties, I took listings in, like I said, 07, 08. They ended up going to foreclosure because the banks didn't know what to do with these short sale offers. They weren't equipped yet. So that kind of got me into the back door of the REO departments in these banks because the property would the property would foreclose, and then I'd ask them what's going on with the property, and they'd say, "Well, it's going to go to our foreclosure department." Okay, how do I get on this list? And sometimes they let me retain the listing because I had already been maintaining it. Sometimes they're already vacant, the people moved out, and they thought the best thing to do is continuity, let the guy hold on to it. Other times they said, you know what, we already have our REO agent in that area. We're going to, send it to them. So during that time, it was a lot of work, didn't make any money, but luckily it got me into a lot of asset management companies and banks. So, little did I know, when the floodgates opened in the REO market, then myself and my team, we couldn't even keep up after a while because they were just feeding us REO listings like crazy.
I'm not in that sector of it, but are you still seeing in the current market, is that still a good resource for you, or is that pretty much shifted?
That was a good market 08 to maybe 2011. Kind of dropped out in 2011 when the market started kind of slowly coming back in 12 and 13. We couldn't rely on that REO, inventory at that time. And so that, again, was a massive shift in my business was, okay, I had gone down this, okay, I'm a bank-owned realtor, getting listings from them, doing all the things involved with, taking a property over to, getting it ready for market to selling it. And then in 2011, 2012, that business slowed down, and being able to go, okay, where's my business going to go now? Right. Because for the last 4 years, it was this, but now the market's changing. And that was a massive shift of, I better get back on marketing. I better get back on follow-up. I better get back on maximizing the power of my network and my database.
It's such a good point. I mean, as things shift, we saw even recently with COVID during the whole, when we were deemed in California not essential, there was a massive uptick with online leads that were actually good leads. They've since gone back to being mediocre, but there are being online leads. It's like 1 out of 100 now, but if you can look for those opportunities, jump on them, and then be ready to pivot off of them. They're fads, unfortunately, but they can also be really profitable.
Our business is based on how quickly you can pivot, right? We can't control the market. We have to pivot and adjust over and over and over again. Because we went from, back to the beginning of my career, strong market, and then short sales, and then REOs, and then that went away. And then what happened with COVID is, wow, anybody out there could get a house, or any agent could get a listing and sell it in 3 days. But you have to be able to adjust and pivot. And then interest rates went up, and then there was a shortage of inventory, and agents who were crushing it before dried up. And now what? Now where do you go?
It's so true. I mean, I feel like, especially in a very compressed period of time, I feel like years past, and you can probably speak better to this because I haven't been in the business for 20 years, but I feel in years past, the cycles were longer and slower, whereas very recently, they've been really just radical. Almost like a light switch is being flipped, and then suddenly we're in a pandemic. Then we're at virtually a 0% rate, and now we're at this this rate jump that we've never historically ever seen, such a radical jump. What has been your through line? What are you doing currently to kind of keep consistent while also leaning into the opportunities as they're presenting themselves?
Well, speaking of the shorter timelines for market adjustments, that's kind of who we are now, right? Our society, our culture, TikTok, stories, everything's fast. Everyone wants things yesterday. So maybe things are going to move faster from here on out. Who knows? But the through line is of knowing what's most important in your business, looking at what's been working, go deep on that. What's not working, do less of that. But at the end of the day, it's relationships, it's database, it's connecting with people. And you keep doing that. Obviously, we can't control the market. When interest rates went sky high, there's certain things we can't control, right? We keep going, we keep making those relationships. But at the end of the day, if you stay in front of people, if you keep bringing value, whether or not you're doing business in a market that was dead, quote unquote dead, it's going to come back.
Yeah, nothing lasts forever and it all changes. And even we were briefly talking just prior to this, it's the constant is remembering that these are people who are making massive choices in their life to buy or sell. And so the having and keeping and maintaining and focusing on that relationship before, during, after the transaction, that is so incredibly important for the longevity of our business, because people like in San Francisco, sellers aren't selling. They're not inclined to. It's not beneficial to them unless they have to. But the relationship I can maintain with them through this period, when that time comes and they decide to start making moves again, you start getting phone calls. And that's the nature of the beast. But to your point, it's showing up consistently, presenting and giving them, sharing them value, giving them things that they're actually questioning, thinking about ahead of them wanting it. That puts you in a really strong position. We actually, for this year, for our marketing, we focused way heavier on actually doing events, smaller, 10 to 20 people, more intimate, where you get to hang out and have good conversations. No sales pitch, but just like, we're doing a whiskey tasting, grab a handful of people and let's have this cool experience together. Or
Nice. What's the date of that? I'm gonna write that down.
yeah, we were, even within that, we were talking, even the next level is a lot of our clients are similar to other clients, or they work for the same company. Why not get them in the same room, hang out and have a cool experience? And then who knows, maybe a friendship will spawn out of that. And then we're that hub, which I feel, especially with technology, to your point, everything is moving crazy fast. And so relationships are paramount to us being able to survive, period.
Especially new agents. I think, when we get in the business, we try really hard, right? We just want to go, go, go and be everything to everyone. I always tell people, just be yourself. Now, I've learned this over time. Be yourself, do the right thing, be the person you are, and the business will come. It will.
It's true. And it's be consistent. That's it. Just have a consistent, just be consistent with marketing, with your social, with your clients, with transactions. The more consistency you can get across the board, it makes your life so much easier. That's where systems come into place. So with being in for 20 years, do you have a team? And then if so, what's the profile look like?
I've got a team of 2 agents. That's us. And we have the support. Being at Compass is we have the support of our company. So we have agent experience managers. We have in-house transaction coordinators that know our system inside and out. We have our marketing team that assists us really well and has our back. And so that's our structure.
That's perfect. I love it. You have no, especially as the market shifted, you didn't have any fat to trim, like your business.
We're small and mighty.
Yeah, that's the way to do it. It's funny, recently, the more and more agents that I sit down and talk to, the small and mighty teams it seems to actually be the more common, more popular. Of course, there's agents that have large teams, like Lindsay Nurin out of Austin, who her and her team, they're doing, I think they did 300 million last year, but they have a big team and they have a lot of staff. Totally different business and business model. But I do like the lean and mean, because you can really ramp up the quality, the time you're spending with people, especially if you're in a very concentrated area, like you're in San Diego, I'm in San Francisco. when it's concentrated like that, you can really focus on the relationships. So with all these insane shifts that are happening, we clearly have seen this big lawsuit coming down the pipe where they're essentially separating the commissions from the buyer's agent. And you have been getting buyer broker agreements signed for a long time. How long have you actually been getting those signed?
Let's see. I was coached up on this, by the way, so I'm not going to take all the credit, but I would say a good probably 6, 7 years. Yeah, that I've implemented this. And, the more you focus on it and the more you practice it, the higher success rate you have with it.
Tell me more about that. Do you find you get pushback? Do you find like what has your experience been within doing it?
Yeah, there's definitely pushback. Look, I didn't want to do this, but like I said, a coach many years ago told me, look, don't turn your wheels, don't spin your wheels on people that are going to waste your time. And I think we've all been there early in our careers. Anybody says that they want to buy a house, whether it's a friend or a relative or someone you met at an open house, you're real quick to put them in the car and drive them around and show them 10, 15 properties. And then, a couple weeks later, you never hear from them again, right? So you get burned a certain amount of times. You start realizing, look, my time is money. And I've always said with work-life balance, I would rather know that I'm not going to work and enjoy that time than work for somebody that's not going to be loyal to me or have that relationship. So I started doing this and with great pushback with my coach at the time of look, and just like everyone else, all of my deals are relationships or referrals or past clients, and good, that's all fine and dandy, but at the end of the day, you want to protect yourself and your time.
Did you find once you started doing that, I feel like I already know the answer, but once people actually put pen to paper, the buyer's mind shift towards you changed and shifted?
It definitely does. First of all, a lot of people that have bought and sold real estate in the past are surprised, right? Nobody's ever done this. My other agent didn't do this for me when I bought this last house, whatever. But at the end of the day, would you list a property without a listing agreement? No, you wouldn't, right? I don't think you're even allowed to. So how are we allowed to represent buyers without a buyer representation agreement? You've got to establish that agency relationship. You've got to confirm a committed relationship with your client. And if you don't do that, we as agents are usually more committed to the relationship than the buyers are. And I think a lot of that comes from lack of knowledge, lack of education of the process. I mean, look, a lot of buyers don't even know how their buyer's agent gets paid, right? This is kind of where that lawsuit came from, is there is this, swerviness of how we get paid. And a lot of agents are out there going, well, you don't pay me anything. I work for you for free. Well, that's not exactly true, right? So commission's being paid by somebody. And if you want to follow down the rabbit hole, the buyer's paying the seller for their home. The seller's paying the commission for both sides. There's always an argument. Is the seller paying the commission? Is the buyer paying the commission because they're providing all the funds to buy the property? Anyway, that's neither here nor there, but the commitment does get better. And you have to be able to deal with, obviously, there's going to be objections that come up. But I believe if you build the value and show them how you are different from other agents and the way you present, it's going to be a game changer for you. Because at the end of the day, I would rather work with 3 people that are committed to me than 7 people that aren't.
It's true. I mean, a lot of our business is, well, this is the way I was taught, or this is the way it's always been done. And you're right. Like if you and I were to start a business together, we'd probably have a contract, not a handshake, or not even with working with buyers. It's usually not even a handshake. It's just this weird implied, I'll go show you houses. Let's go, get in my car. And in thinking about it, it's kind of ludicrous of every other business transaction, there is some sort of more clear distinction as to what I'm doing for you. And we sign here when we're both on the same page. So it's funny in thinking about it, how ludicrous that actually sounds to not have any sort of paperwork between the two parties. Do you use the standard? We in California we have the car forms. Is that what you use?
Yes. I don't know how it's done in other states. I've been an agent in California only. So the good news about California is CAR has great contracts, right? That's why those lawsuits haven't made it this way yet. I'm seeing copycat lawsuits here and there. Hasn't made its way here. I feel like our contracts in general really tight. So why would you reinvent the wheel? I mean, you've got lawyers and all these people, and we've paid our dues over years and years to pay these people to come up with these contracts. Why would we change it? So yeah, the CAR contract is the way to go.
When you sit down with a buyer and then you start to broach this topic, how do you typically, what is your value add? How do you approach it with them?
So my process is, first of all, you have a listing presentation, right? Every agent spills over a listing presentation. They plan for it. They have their marketing plan. They have their CMA. They make an appointment. They make a big deal out of it. But when it comes to meeting with a buyer, they just go and meet them at a property and go show them property. Don't even talk to them about the process, right? So you've got to have that mindset shift of, this is a buyer consultation, right? Just a listing presentation is a buyer consultation, I think, is a little bit more important, because you have to set the expectation, explain the process, talk about the agency relationship, how you get paid. A lot of agents don't want to talk about how they get paid, right? You got to address the elephant in the room, because if you're not asking the questions and giving them the solutions and being the professional, they're going to always wonder what's going on. Who is the professional here?
I think having those, regardless of how uncomfortable you feel doing it, these conversations need to be had.
Oh, trust me, it was very uncomfortable early on, right? And it's not just, hey, buyer, here's the contract, sign it. No, there's a process, right? Going back to, like I said, you have to have a buyer consultation. What does that mean? You have to pre-qualify the buyer on the phone. You have to ask them questions. What are their goals? What is their financing? What is this and that? And then set an appointment. Most of the time, I try to meet them at the office, if it's possible. You bring them into the office, you sit them in the conference room, and it's a presentation. So we have a buyer presentation that talks about the whole buyer timeline of, from the meeting of sitting down with me the very first time, to obtaining financing, to looking at the properties, to writing offers, everything we do in escrow that is behind the scenes that a lot of people don't know or don't talk about. You got to put that out there. You got to build the value and show them what's involved in the buying side of the process. And then, most importantly, which a lot of agents don't do, and I don't know many that do, is I sit there and I go through the residential purchase agreement with the buyer at that conversation. I tell them, this is the most important form or contract in real estate, right? It is the contract between you and the seller. And many times when we're out there and we're excited, and in the times of multiple offers, I'm not going to just shove a piece of paper in front of you and go, here, sign this, or send you a DocuSign where you just go click, click, click like a video machine or like a video game, and you haven't read a word. So we're going to read it right now. We're going to go through it page by page. You're going to understand what it is, and you're going to be the smartest buyer out there, because you're going to know what this says and what you're signing. Because when you find the right house, we're going to talk about price, down payment, terms, and we're going to write that offer like that, because you're going to know what that form is. Education is key.
It's funny. I have a similar process, and I always share it with my clients, is if we slow down now, we can go fast later. Because when you find the property, it's true, because especially in a competitive market like you're in, we don't have time at that point to really go through the the contract again, ask all the questions. We're now focused on price. It's competitive. How are we going to put you in the best position? So if we just take that time up front, it it saves them a lot of stress and headache. But it pre-qualifies them, because if they're just at that point not ready to make a purchase, they're going to tell you. Or they're going to reestablish time frame and be like, "Hey, I'd love to go over this now, but we're actually not going to be ready for 9 or 12 months." And you're like, "Cool, we can then slow down," and everybody's more on the same page, rather than you assuming they're at 1 month, they're actually at 12 months of when they want to purchase. I agree. I mean, there's nothing about this I'm not on the same page. And I love that you meet them out of the gate in the office. I feel that sets such a strong precedence right up front, rather than let me show you properties first, or let's meet in a noisy cafe and have all these distractions around us. Like, this is a professional setting and we're doing this very important thing. How long do you find your first consultations, your initial consultation is?
Oh, they can go an hour, sometimes more, man.
I feel like it's north of an hour if you're doing contracts.
I mean, especially with someone who's never done this before, right? They have a lot of questions, and I really slow down and reiterate things and ask them if they're comfortable or if they understand. It depends on the client, but yeah, it's an hour to north of an hour, because we go through the buyer process first. We go through everything we do, like I talked about. We go through a questionnaire to ask them everything, their timeline, you name it. We talk about financing. We go through the RPA. And then towards the end is where we present the buyer representation agreement.
If somebody's listening, the RPA is the residential purchase agreement, just so people know.
Oh, yeah. So we go through the residential purchase agreement, like I talked about, which is the contract between the buyer and the seller, so that they're comfortable knowing what they're going to sign once we do find that house. Or sometimes, in a very competitive market, buyers are out there writing offers on multiple properties. So we're moving quickly. So they got to know what the residential purchase agreement says, what it does, what it means. But then finally, we go over the buyer representation agreement, right? That's where they commit to you, you commit to them, you establish agency, they understand the process, they understand how you're getting paid, right? Because, that has to be put out there, especially with this, I think it was Missouri lawsuit that came down, or whatever it is. So that makes the process an easy, kind of streamlined conversation, right? You're not just sitting them down or showing up at a property and be like, "Hey, you have to commit to me right now." You got to show them your value. You got to build rapport. You got to ask questions. You got to have them trust you, right? And, in that conversation, they may want to think about it. They may want to read that thing over and over again. They may want to talk to somebody. Great, but you've already established that this is how we work together. Obviously, when we go to a listing presentation, our goal is to have the listing signed right away, but that doesn't always happen, right? They sign later. So the money's in the follow-up right after that. You got to follow up with them, see if they have any questions, confirm the goals you guys talked about, and then, send that, buyer representation agreement to have them DocuSign.
And with the buyer's agreement, do you typically, and I know it's all negotiated, so we'll just throw that on the table with a slight eye roll as I say it, but typically it's a 2.5% to the buyer's agent, I should say. Do you generally stay at that number, or do you do a different number off of there?
We're in this conversation of this NAR lawsuit way more than the consumer, right? I think a lot of the consumers don't even understand it. So I think there will be a shift in the future of, buyers might expect that they may have to come out of pocket at some point, because right now the buyer agreement says you owe me 2.5% unless somebody else pays me, which is always the seller, right? And if you show a property and that seller's only offering 2%, you're still going to do it. It's the buyer's best interest for you to represent them and do your best. So what I've done in the past is I've written in there, whenever I've gotten pushback, is first of all, I'll write it to 2.5%, right? You write it 2.5%, and it says in there, if anyone's paying you more, you get to keep it. In the rare case that you get a 3%. But if you're getting pushback, I've just written per MLS in that box right there.
Oh, there you go.
Because at the end of the day, look, like I said from the very beginning, that we're in a people business. The client's best interest comes first. Now, if this lawsuit changes it where it gives the seller the opportunity to offer zero commission, obviously that's going to change things, right? We can't work for free. We won't work for free. So that conversation is going to change a little bit. But with a buyer representation agreement, or with some agents that are out there going without buyer representation agreements, you are taking what the seller's offering. And unfortunately, when the market was really strong, people were only offering 2%. I've seen that change. I've seen the lowest right now is 2.25. But it's hovering around 2.5% right now.
Yeah, ours flutters around, but it's around 2.5, sometimes 3. Kind of depends. When you're sitting with the buyer, you've gone through the whole presentation, you've shown all the value you're providing. What's generally the biggest objection that you hear?
Well, I've never had to sign one of these before, right? If they've experienced real estate before, I'm not talking about first-time buyers. I'm talking about people who have bought and sold at least 1 or 2 properties in their lives. Well, it goes back to showing them your value, right? Differentiating yourself, showing the value. You're a professional. Again, it starts with meeting in the office, right? Actually, it starts with the pre-appointment where you send them a pre-buyer consultation email and presentation, sometimes a questionnaire, setting the stage, having an agenda for the meeting. So yes, Mr. or Mrs. Buyer, you've never had to sign this before, but here with our company or our team, we do things differently because not everybody or almost nobody does all the things that we've talked about leading up to this conversation.
I can absolutely see that's going to be the most common objection because a lot of people either have not heard of it or they didn't use it or need it previously. Times have changed and times are changing.
Times are changing, and you're not going to win them all. You might lose a few. You might risk continuing working with this buyer without a signature. But I feel like the more you stick to your guns and stay true to what you believe and the contract, like I said, you wouldn't list a property without a listing contract, right?
It's funny. As soon as you were saying that, that's immediately what I thought. I was like, but I wouldn't start working. I've even had conversations with a listing, like I'm working on winning a listing and they're asking me for things. And I'm like, I'm happy to give that to you once we're under contract.
Yeah.
Because I can't work for free. Like it doesn't pencil out in any industry.
Well, what I tell people, especially on the listing side, is look, I'm happy to do all this for you and help you, but you have to sign this agreement so that I can have the authority to work on your behalf. Otherwise, we have nothing.
And it's funny, if you just now take all of this conversation and you shift it into a different industry, let's say a doctor or an attorney. Listen, if I blew out my knee and I went to the specialist for knees, and then he met me at a Starbucks and was like, yeah, you can sign this. You don't have to. I mean, it's kind of, sure, we can work together and you just pay me when you start feeling good. Like that, I would never hire that surgeon. I would feel like they don't have a process. They're too casual. They're casual with my health. It's not important to them. Whereas if you find that perfect surgeon and they're like, I have an appointment in 3 months from now on a Wednesday. Would you like that? Or would you like to wait another year before we can meet? And then you meet and there's a whole process. There's a check-in. You actually feel more protected because you do feel they have a process. They know how to carry me from A to Z, and they're taking me step by step through this whole experience. And so I can absolutely see where it's a game changer for you and why you would continue to do it. Obviously, it was very uncomfortable and tricky to overcome 6-7 years ago, but you've kept it and you maintained it, and you're doing that for obvious reason. It works.
Well, look, I mean, everybody thinks that realtors get paid too much money and they don't do enough work, right? So anyone thinks that they can have their sister or their cousin or their grandma's dog represent them, but they don't understand everything that goes into a real estate process or a real estate transaction. So if we spell it out for them and make them understand, educate them on the process and say, do you want the guy that sold, three, four, 500 homes in his career to represent you, or your friend because you don't want to hurt their feelings and maybe they've sold two homes because they don't really sell real estate but they have their license. Okay, do you want to put your biggest investment in this person's hands? It's like putting your knee in some back alley Starbucks meeting you orthopedic surgeon, right? You're not going to do that. But you got to open their eyes. Some people just don't understand. So it's not their fault. They need to be educated a little bit.
And I think too, within our community, we just have to view this a little bit differently. If I had a client who was, say, moving to Chicago and they were like, hey, do you know a really amazing agent in Chicago? And let's say I didn't know a few people there. I would pick up the phone and say, tell me about your process. I would want to know, do you have a process for starters to take my client who is very important to me, your colleague, and you're going to walk them through this experience. And if they're like, well, I don't really have a process. We meet them at the property, then we maybe go at a cafe. It's like, no fly zone. Like, we're done. On to the next one. And so in shifting it, other agents, they want to know too that you have a process, and your buyers want to know you have a process. So that should give you immediate permission to start working this into the whole process. It's so important.
Look, what have we talked about in the past, right? Is your referral agents, you have to treat them like clients, right? You have to prove to them that you're worthy of their referrals, just like a client. Because unless you already have a relationship and you've already maybe done business with this referral agent, you don't know them from Joe down the street. So you've got to talk to them. You've got to put them through your own, standards interview. And that's what we talk about with clients here if they're relocating somewhere. Look, let me place you with an agent. Let me ask them the questions that you maybe don't know to ask or don't want to. And then I'll come back to you and say, this is the agent that matches you the best. Otherwise, you might walk into an open house and get an agent that doesn't really work out for you.
And the worst thing that can happen as an agent referring your client who's incredibly important to you is them calling you up and saying, hey, it was a really bad fit. I had to fire him. That's the absolute worst thing that can happen.
It's a bad reflection on you.
It totally does. It teeters your reputation. And just knowing that these people have processes. So let me ask you this. When you pick up the phone, let's say you have a client moving to New York and you've come up with a short list. What are the 3 most important qualities you want that receiving agent to have? What are you looking for?
Well, first of all, I do a deep dive on them on the internet as much as I can to see what they're doing, what kind of business they're doing, how they present themselves. Obviously, we don't always have access to their production. Sometimes through maybe a third-party website, we might. But I'll go as far as stalk their social media, see how they carry themselves, how they present themselves, because that's really important as well. But the questions I ask them is, how knowledgeable are you in X area? How many transactions have you done in there? How have you set yourself apart from other agents? And what is your process when you receive an out of area relocation client? And that's really important too, right? Because you may have a process for your buyers or sellers in town, but the relocation client requires a little bit more attention, right? They have no idea about the area. They don't know the schools. They don't know good area from bad. They don't know the commutes. I also ask them, how long have you lived in the area too, right? Like me, I grew up in San Diego. I know the whole county by the back of my hand. So one of the things I ask is, where do you guys want to live? Okay, great. Do you both commute or do you commute? How far is that? Kids' school's important. And I'm able off the top of my head to go, okay, you don't want to be here. You're saying you want to be here, but your commute's going to be hellish going there. So maybe we want to rethink that. So that's really important. The relocation client is vastly different than somebody who already knows the area. You gotta educate them. You have to start with, this is the market, and now let's whittle it down. And I tell those people it's more of a process of elimination than anything else.
It's funny. I'm laughing because we have a very similar parallel process of let's start wide, and then we'll narrow the scope until we find that area. And it is, I agree. There's San Francisco is obviously a mass transient place, and San Diego has definitely seen a lot of people moving to the area. And so there is a huge educational component to it because they don't know. Like if you're on one side of the city, or if you're in one area, that's an additional 30 minutes if you're trying to commute down to Silicon Valley. And so to your point, you may want to consider exploring this neighborhood if you want a higher quality of life. And then if you want these other things, you may want to look here.
Yeah. So that referral agent has to A, have that knowledge, but be willing to do the work, right? Willing to do the legwork of, okay, I'm not going to just tell you why, I'm going to show you. So let's go to this neighborhood. Let's look at a few. I'm going to tell you why I think this neighborhood fits you. And I'm going to take you to this other neighborhood and show you a few here and tell you why and show you why I don't believe it's a fit. But at the end of the day, it's your decision. So I have to show you. So it's more legwork.
It is. It's a little bit more coaching and education, but it's important because ultimately you help people fulfill their dream, whatever that may be.
That's it. Yeah.
There is, and I'm not trying to plug the brokerage, but on the app, the Compass app, if you actually scroll down on the first page, it says like find an agent, and you can search for somebody and immediately their production pops up.
I use that all the time.
All the time. It's so funny how much I actually use that because I can get an idea of, like, if my client's in the $2 million range, I need to find an agent who's comfortable and familiar in that price range. So I can really quickly see their production. I can see if they've done a bunch of deals in that range. And then we just kind of parlay it from there.
Well, I go there first, right? Let's go check that out and see if you can find somebody. But then if you don't, then you got to take other avenues and do a little bit more work online to find someone.
Yeah, Google's my number 2 go-to spot. Similar process. You just kind of deep dive until you find that right fit. But you're right. It's somebody they have the process and that whole component down. And then you're also just trying to find a personality match because your client, you want to make sure the two gel.
Well, that's really important. Yeah.
Man, that flew by. That was actually a much quicker hour than I had expected.
Whoa, it's been an hour?
Yeah, dude.
Can we do another hour? This has been great, man. Thanks.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure. So thank you for your time. And then, I look forward to this episode going live.
Yeah, I can't wait. Appreciate it, man.